up, everybody?
Don't mind me. I'm making some dinner.
You might be able to hear me. Just might. Might be able to hear me regardless. But anyways, I'm fixing up some den. Making some zucchini boats. It's ground turkey. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't follow a recipe or anything. But this is basically what I do. And of course I'll be covering the protests and stuff later. But later on until later. Obviously when I get done cooking. So I hope everyone's doing good tonight. This zucchini here, as you can see, I hauled them out. This was like a little boat. I'm swimming on the river. Now I'm about to ground up this turkey. It's already ground, but I'm about to fix it up with some seasonings. I'm gonna use salt. Well, this is pepper. Use pepper. Use garlic salt. I'm gonna put garlic in there too. I'm gonna use salt. I'm going to use coriander. Paprika. I'm gonna use some paprika. More fucking herbs, man. Well, I got sage. I need some sage. Okay. So the first thing I'm gonna do is ground this turkey. For that, chop up the garlic. Maybe probably 2 cloves of garlic for this. I'm not gonna make enough for the leftovers. I'm just gonna make enough for 2 servings of this, even though I probably chopped up way too much of it. I'll probably make all the ground turkey, but I'll only make it into boats. Like 2 of us for tonight, and then we'll save the rest of it for the rest. We need some of this here pasta sauce as well. This is supposed to be pretty keto friendly, so this one's got 11 grams of carb per serving, which each serving size is a half of a cup, so we'll use probably about around a half of a cup for this recipe, and then we'll put the rest of it, save it for later. Okay, now for the fun part. Yeah. Just getting hot. I did the dishes this morning, so it's Nora's turn to do the dishes. That's how I There's no sound in the video I'm playing. I think it's just people are just remembering the late great Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I always say the names backwards. I either say Gator Binsberg or Bader Ginsburg. I'm still to this day not sure how you say it without looking at it. So I don't really know if it's Gator Binsberg or Bader Binsberg, but I think you know who the fuck I'm talking about, right? And ultimately, I'm just talking to myself because there's only like one person watching me, which thank you for watching me, whoever you are. I appreciate you. You're a real champ. It's by my mom. Hi, Mom. If it's anyone other than my mom, honestly, they're fucking awesome. And they're real cool. Dude, peeling garlic is such a fucking pain in my ass, dude. Sticky as fuck. It gets so all over my fingers. It doesn't come off right. You gotta really smash the fuck out of it for it to come off right. And I don't like that shit in my food at all. At all. And now that took like fucking 2 minutes. And I still have to cut this shit. Meanwhile, this skillet is getting hot. Also, these things are fucking hard as shit to sweep up. So, I don't like to make a mess out of them, but they make a mess and that's a big deal. Meanwhile, the skillet is getting hot. And it's just gonna sizzle when I put that turkey in. Actually, I should add some oil to that pan. So it's not dry as all hell when it goes in there. You know, turkey is dry. So dry. It's just right, isn't it? Yeah, that should be good. I'm adding garlic salt as well to the seasoning. And also I'm adding fucking this roasted herb and garlic stuff. Tomato sauce. Okay, we're gonna add the turkey in now. You're gonna hear it sizzle. Sizzle, baby. Oh no, I forgot the oil, that's why. I'm gonna add the oil in now. When I was a kid, I always wanted to have my own cooking show. And yeah, here I am, even though no one's watching it. It's okay though. It's alright though. People will watch it eventually. I'll have millions of fans and they'll go back and watch my old videos. And they'll be like, oh my god, vintage Ebony. Alright, I did some avocado oil here. You know what? Just because I love it so much, I'm going to add some sesame oil. It just makes everything taste so good. Extra dramatic. Now some salt. Add some sage. I don't know what the sage is gonna do, but it needs to kind of have some herbs. But this shit will have herbs in it. I'm gonna add some paprika. Pepper. Oh, I can smell the sesame oil already. It smells so good. These fucking pepper takes forever. I'm not fucking around today. It's gonna be the old-fashioned pepper shaker thing. The old-fashioned way. Back in my day, we didn't have pepper grinders at the grocery store. Coriander. I don't know what coriander does either. But I saw Sam the Cooking Guy put it on his meet. So Sam the Cooking Guy can do it. I can do it. If you don't know who Sam the Cooking Guy is, just check him out on his channel. It's really cool. He cooks a lot of food that's easy to make. Like burgers and steaks and chicken and stuff on the grill. And he's a real chill dude too. So you like his channel like you like my channel, probably. You like chill people. You just do chill shit in a chill way. Turn the heat up on this baby. Too slow. Too slow. Anyways, while that's going, trying to find something else on the tube to watch. Because I'm sure this is pretty boring. Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Gator Ginsburg? Ruth Gator Ginsburg. Yeah. I don't know. Let's watch this.
And they had 5 trained officers on this 62-year-old, 150-pound man, holding him down. And then they let him go, and they back up and make a semicircle and shoot him 22 times and kill him.
Welcome to the Power Hour with Tim Black. Today, my guest is none other than Christopher E. Brown, Esquire, the principal attorney of the Brown firm PLLC. Now, during his extensive legal career, he has established himself as both a competent practitioner and a talented litigator. I sat down and talked to Mr. Brown the day before the Breonna Taylor decision was made. We discussed her case and also many others. Remember, misinformation makes us weak. Only
how's everybody doing tonight?
give us power.
I'm doing good. I was pissed off yesterday, but
state of emergency in Louisville and other places are bracing as well.
when I was pissed off today, I guess.
What do you think is going to happen, and
fucking annoyed.
how did we get here in this mess?
Oh, wow. That second part is a tough question. What do I think is going to happen? The one thing I will give them
Brown
credit
this
for
gravy up a little
with
bit.
respect to whether or not they're going to indict the officers in Breonna Taylor's case.
What am I
they
saying?
did,
I'm not even making
take it
gravy.
outside of misdemeanors. And suddenly they're required to look at a case and decide if they want to go before a grand jury on these officers they work with, week in and week out. My understanding is they have passed that off to at least the federal prosecutors. Even better is when they assign a special prosecutor who's from outside the jurisdiction. I don't think that happened in this Breonna Taylor situation. So what is going to happen?
Okay, now I gotta strain this turkey.
The way it goes down during these grand jury hearings is the prosecutor's presenting the case. The prosecutor presents an expert witness that they use all the time. And you can imagine how easy it is to not get an indictment. So depending on how the federal prosecutor handles it, you got to hope that he's sufficiently firewalled off or, doesn't have a relationship with the officers, and he's able to present a case in an objective manner, and we'll see how this thing turns out.
Folks are so skeptical, and I'm skeptical as well.
He's so dry. I know what. It's dry because there's no fat.
I've heard people criticizing the family for taking the $12 million. I don't know what they expected them to do. Turn down the money and also have a shot in the dark case where they may or may not get an indictment. I mean, there's got to be some level of
to prosecute officers for mistakes, and that's a tough burden. You arrive, we get out here, we get to a car accident, or we forgot to, hitch our trailer to our car and it rolls down the hill and hits somebody. We can be sued for that negligence in those accidents. Officers cannot be sued for negligence. They can't be sued for a mistake. It almost has to be borderline, purposeful, intentional, malicious behavior in order to overcome the qualified immunity defense that they can raise. Now, people can be upset about them taking the money. You can't. I don't understand that. It's a record verdict, at least for the state, for an individual. 12 million is a huge verdict. I was excited about $3.5 million for Wayne Jones. But we're talking about a homeless man with, who has no job and no dependents. Breonna Taylor was a young woman. She's an EMT. She's a bright young lady. She had a big future ahead of herself. And that's going to add value to the case. I mean, the way these cases determine damages is a whole other problem. The value of the life itself isn't really something that's considered. It's the compensation that your dependents would have received throughout the rest of your life, your wife, your children. And for a young woman like Breonna Taylor, she had a full life to have kids.
I don't understand how they won the civil suit, but
depending on her
there was
sort of,
no
life
charges.
expectancy. So 12 million that's a great verdict. They got to take it. It doesn't take away from the possibility to get the indictment against the officers, but that's a different story. Now,
I did not put enough onions.
I've done interviews and I've talked about how hard it is to get these cases settled. How they fight these things vehemently.
Sure.
I was surprised to see this settlement come so early, and it makes you wonder what contributing factors were that they sort of wanted to get past before they came out.
Let me taste this turkey and make sure it has flavor.
And to sell it early like this,
Because turkey will fuck around and you
sort
have
of,
no
I can see
flavor.
some of the public thinking, you want to settle the case and agree to these changes, and then go into the grand jury indictment hearing and say, well, we've agreed to all these changes now, but they weren't implemented before. I mean, that happened with Wayne Jones. They had no procedures for dealing with people suffering from mental health issues, and they imposed them after this shooting in Wayne Jones took place. So similarly, they're going to implement all these changes as a part of this settlement, and the concern is they're going to sort of fall back on that and say, well, all those changes weren't in place. No knock warrants were legal, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to definitely talk about Wayne Jones and the verdict, and I'm sure that you will elaborate if you would give us that opportunity to hear that case. But I know we also discussed how typically, as you stated, this is not usual. Normally, civil cases, we don't hear civil cases till 3-4 years later, it seems like. I mean, it's almost to the point where we forgot it fell out the news cycle, and then we hear about a civil case coming up for trial, and then it goes back into the news cycle.
Why do I still hear the fucking Vader Ginsburg shit in the background? It's literally not on. What the fuck?
Cycle. So that was strange.
Good, man.
Some people compared this to some type of like hush money. The fact that the money came so quickly, as if now the family's just going to go away. I don't think that's the case. What is that hush money?
Well, no, it's not hush money. I'll tell you this: that in many jurisdictions, the Fourth Circuit adopted it, that municipalities are not entitled to non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements. It's a violation of the First Amendment. So it's not hush money. The family can still talk about it. But what it does is it precludes some of the evidence coming out. Right? For example, one of the problems, the concerns about that case was the police department came out after the incident and said, oh, we had no body cams. And then these pictures showed up.
Listen, I'm allowed to lick my fingers if it's my own goddamn house, right?
Now, was there video footage? Like, we won't know. It's settled now. We'll never find out. And the question is, could it have been so bad that the defendants were like, look, let's settle it for $12 million before we have to pay 30? Like, you never know what you're gonna find.
It's the typical.
They shouldn't have settled.
Go for the low ball number now. Well, it's not a low ball number by any means, but go for the lesser number now. That's what.
I don't even know how long I'm supposed to cook this for.
Right? It's not a great. You're thinking it'll be worse
For
if you
it to,
continue,
cook
or
the
the number
zucchini
gets
and shit.
bigger if you fight it. And, that's my
Because the
understanding.
zucchini is raw.
And yes, and this is the predicament.
I'm stuffing it with the ground turkey mixture now, and I'm gonna add cheese later. It's almost
They can't tell
done.
their story. Like Breonna Taylor,
But
unfortunately,
I don't
they had
know
neighbors, right? And people with cell phones.
how to
out
make.
there.
Oh, you know what? I'm
their
gonna cover it in
apartments are being
foil.
shot
I
into
think.
as well. But you're dealing with
cover it in foil.
a plaintiff who's deceased. You're listening to the officer's version of the events. You're trying to send out FOIA requests to get information. They don't want to disclose anything. They never want to reveal the videos. They wait and look over everything themselves for months before you get a chance to look at it. And something like Breonna Taylor, where this was, 5, 6, 7 months ago,
Right.
and it settles that quickly, before any of that stuff comes out, I'm sure you can't turn down $12 million. I'm sorry, Tim. I don't know how. That's a when you talk about outliers, I think the largest I've seen was one in Baltimore for $16 million.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we have completely innocent people like Breonna Taylor was. That's where you have that kind of a verdict, or that kind of a settlement fee. So it settles early, and we'll kind of never know what could have been uncovered if the civil case had
That's good.
proceeded. And
Let's hope it doesn't burn
the
or
indictment
get
can
dried out.
result in that stuff coming out because, well, we'll see. I mean, the officers are the defendants, and they can demand to be released. If they don't do that, we might never see if there was dash cam footage on the two officers. I think one officer had a dash cam, and the other one had the mount, but not the dash cam. And we'll never know what was going on with that footage. Not the civil case is resolved.
No, we talked about it, and you said you were skeptical that things would proceed. That there's such a high barrier of proof on the prosecutor's behalf, like on their side, and police officers. I mean, since they did have a warrant, and they can't have it. No knock is present. I think it was changed at the very end, or something about announce. And then one neighbor said there was an announcement. It gets kind of convoluted, once you start unpacking it.
It does. And this is the problem with the civil cases. The officers, under any circumstance, have a guaranteed trip to the Court of Appeals to challenge if qualified immunity is denied to the officer. So they can go through the civil suit. And if you're looking for, when you're looking for $4, $5, $6 million, rest assured, they'll drop 100, 200 grand in a heartbeat just to see if they can pull something off. Right? You never know with litigation, right? They think the lawyer's not that good. He can't handle that type of litigation. It's too heavy for him. They'll drop 200 grand just to see how it plays out. And if the court denies qualified immunity, which is rare, I have one like this in the Fourth Circuit right now, the officer is entitled to an interlocutory appeal. They can say, whoa, before we go to trial, I want to see if the appellate court agrees with this. And of course, if the court grants qualified immunity, the estate has to appeal. So no matter how you look at it, the officers are guaranteed a right to the Court of Appeals before they have to face going to trial.
That's bullshit.
For it to happen this early before they sort of take that shot for that amount of money is pretty impressive.
Just switching gears just a little bit, while the Breonna Taylor case really is disturbing. But I would like to ask a question about a lot of the shootings that I cover are involving people with mental issues, mental health issues. And when you talk about qualified immunity, why are police officers required to have a higher level of respect, treatment, higher level of
temperature thing doesn't work on my oven either.
They basically can determine that there must be something.
So I don't even know what I'm baking these at, but I'm gonna bake them
naked in
on medium high.
Running from house to house, and they didn't realize this person did not follow procedures.
I'm gonna check it in 20 minutes.
Due to a fact he has a mental disability.
It's basically 6:20, so I'm gonna check it at 6:40.
When dealing with people with disabilities.
That is a fantastic question. So let's talk about qualified immunity. It's a judicially created doctrine. So 42 section USC 1983 was put into place really to put force and effect behind the Ku Klux Klan Act, right? So when the Civil Rights Act was put in place, and this statute sort of codifies that, and it says that government actors, state actors will be liable, not just police officers. Anybody who works for the state, sanitation,
God, it finally went away. Oh my God, I found it.
If they violate your constitutional rights. And then the court kind of came up behind it and said, well, you must have really meant there's some.
This is meal supposed to be keto, but it's got tomato sauce in it.
We need to protect state actors from frivolous lawsuits and being harassed. They need to be able to do their duties without worrying about it all the time. These are the justifications. Now, for some reason, when we're talking about police officers, we treat them with these kid gloves, like they aren't trained in the use of excessive force, like they aren't trained in Fourth Amendment issues, they aren't trained in search and seizure, the use of tasers, and they treat them like they're high school kids. There's a pretty seminal case, U.S. Supreme Court. It's from 1987. It was an officer tased a man who was jaywalking. No commands, no hey you, no get out of the road, just tased him, dropped it. And the court found that the officer was entitled to qualified immunity because we hadn't had a circumstance quite like that before, and therefore that officer wasn't on notice that would have been a violation of that man's rights. Now think about that. Do we need a prior case that's exactly the same to understand you can't just out of the blue tase somebody who's walking across the street, not on the sidewalk? but this is how it plays out.
That's horrific. But I never heard that one. That's a new one. Okay, so like, you got to have precedents in all cases in order to bring charges or to get any type of action, against officers.
Qualified immunity has two prongs. The first prong is, did the officer violate the individual's rights? You look at the circumstances and, were they trying to resist arrest, or what was the nature of the crime they were involved in? Did the officer reasonably have a fear for his safety or the safety of others for engaging in the use of excessive force? And if you say yes, and they can take the prong in any order they want. The second prong is, was that right clearly established in the law? In other words, the right to be free from whatever that officer did to you. So when you have a situation, what the courts do is they look back and say, have we had a scenario like this before? And they try, if there isn't one, they say, well, that officer didn't have notice that would have been a violation of that person's rights, and he or she is entitled to qualified immunity. But there are so many times where you have to ask yourself, why do we need precedent to understand that this is a violation of this person's rights?
Common sense.
Yeah, there's a recent Supreme Court opinion from a couple years ago, Casella v. Hughes. Officers get report of another mental health case. Officers get report of a woman in her own yard holding a knife, acting erratically. Okay. 3 officers show up. There's a fence, a chain link fence, separating them from the woman who's 15, 20 feet away. She's standing next to her roommate. And the 2 officers say, well, we were there, we were trying to talk to her, we wanted to see what was going on. The third officer, he waited about 5 seconds and shot her 3 times. Okay. You can't just open fire on people. The woman's in her own yard holding a knife, which is not illegal. Nothing wrong with that. And he testified his position was, in seeking qualified immunity, I didn't know if she was going to injure the woman next to her. And while the courts were like, well, that was bad, but we haven't had a case quite like this before, though this was a new situation where you're dealing with someone and there's a claim of mental health and they're standing next to someone they could injure. Therefore, the right wasn't clearly established, and that officer was granted qualified immunity. He got away with it.
Amazing. That I mean, I'm left speechless. I tell people, don't call the police. If you got an issue, try to take care of it. Okay, so what about the story? Someone's got their hands they're already handcuffed. They're already in custody, and then some strange reason they get smothered to death. We just saw that play out. I don't know. He was naked. Mr. Brown, the man was naked. He was cuffed, and they still smothered him to death. Do you foresee? They're going to say, well, we didn't know we could. We could smother a guy by doing push-ups on his face and pushing his head into the pavement. What's going to be the excuse that's made by the police? What can they say?
Well, this is one of those scenarios where you have to approach these cases in a creative way. You have to have an open mind, review everything, and figure out where you can come up with something. For example, with Wayne Jones, there was an allegation that he had a knife, that he refused to drop the knife and he tried to stab an officer. This is why you didn't hear about this when it happened. Everybody goes, oh, well, we're not going to worry about that case. And a different lawyer had the case and it got dismissed on summary judgment, and it was going up on appeal, and that's where I got involved and I reviewed it. And reviewing the tape, I made the argument, because there is established case law that once a suspect is detained, excessive force may not be used. And they had 5 trained officers on this 62-year-old, 150-pound man, holding him down, and then they let him go, and they back up and make a semicircle and shoot him 22 times and kill him. And I made the argument that creates a perverse incentive where officers can have someone detained and let them go and shoot them based on the justification that occurred before they had them under control. So in the example you're giving, I would like to think you could be successful making an argument that once that individual is detained and under control and no longer a threat, handcuffed, etc., excessive force may not be used at that point in time.
From this apartment,
James Boyd,
because we needed a 2-bedroom.
Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he went
so we went to go look at a couple of apartments.
firing squad. They all fired on him.
We like the one, but
I think he was in the hills.
I don't think we're gonna
and
be
was
able to move in
camping
in
out.
time
He
because
wouldn't
we have
leave
to
the
go.
campground. He was homeless, but he wouldn't leave
Fucking
the park or
notice our
something. It
landlord.
was a long time ago, but you know, and that was a white gentleman.
We
I
don't
think he
wanna
was
pay
homeless.
for
And like I
rents.
stated, I really don't know where to go with this, Mr. Brown. It just seems so horrific what citizens have to deal with when it comes to law enforcement. So with Mr. Jones, right?
Yes.
What was the outcome of that case? How did you win over the jury? Well, the judge in that case.
I didn't. Let's be clear.
I
I had to appeal. She dismissed the case 3 times. I had to appeal 3 times, and I won 3 times. After the 3rd appeal, I tell you, Tim, it was the timing. It was about 3 days after George Floyd got killed, and the opinion drops. And in the last paragraph, the court references George Floyd and Michael Brown and says, this has to stop in the opinion. I mean, I got t-shirts printed up for the next time we do a vigil from Wayne Jones in Martinsburg, West Virginia. This has to stop. And after that, the counsel called me and said, look, do you want to revisit settlement talks?
Okay.
I was like, yeah, I bet you do. And so we went back to the Fourth Circuit mediator, spent about a week and got it resolved. So the judge.
Okay. So the judge didn't conclude, but they settled the case because the evidence that you presented, the case that you put on, was so riveting, and also the timing, as you stated, was so compelling that they knew that you could probably get a better award. Is that what we're coming up with?
Well, and after the 3rd appeal, they were out of options. It was going back for trial.
Excuses.
And that's where the pressure starts. They don't want to go to trial. They'll take a shot and know they have a chance at appeal and know they have a really good chance of winning. But once you get to the point where the case is going to go to trial, things change a little bit. And so we were set to go to trial, and they settled the case. And they might not be worried about the money.
Travis Scott's dropping new music tonight. Oh, it's Thursday night, right? So it'll be midnight on the East Coast. They're allowed to drop music on the West Coast at 9 o'clock, right?
You know, the
Is that how it
headline
works?
sometimes can be worth more than the money. You know, jury finds in favor of man shot 22
And
times.
from whatever
How
snippet
much
I
they
heard, it
award
sounded
doesn't
really
matter.
good.
That's a jury
Let
finding.
me see if I can find it again.
Right, that the officers did wrong. And these settlements always, even in Breonna Taylor, there's no admission of wrongdoing.
Right, I noticed that. I saw that. That was something that really stuck in the craw of a lot of people when we spoke about the issue. Was just, it's like, you know, nothing happened. Well, something happened, but it's not our fault. You know, whatever happened, we're really sorry. We feel really bad.
No, that sounds
that
like
she
shit.
died.
That wasn't what I heard.
You know, yada yada yada. But no.
Anyways, I'm
admission to
excited.
guilt. That's a horrible thing for the family to have to accept.
Yeah, that's tough. And the family in the Jones case had a hard time with it. And I tried to explain to them this. When you walk out here in this climate and you the public knows you settled the case of $3.5 million, you don't need them to admit they did wrong. Like, everybody knows. The concern is the lack of accountability for the officers. Those officers still work there. Like, one of them doesn't, but the other 4 still work for Martinsburg Police Department. They have salaries, they got retirement benefits. And that's what upsets the family. They wanted to see some of that be disrupted. And that can only come through either a finding from a civil jury, which will follow them and hurt them, or criminal indictment. That's the only thing you can do.
I want them to admit it. I know I'm petty. I want to hear you say, we did this, we shouldn't have done it. My sister, cousin, friend, brother, son, should be allowed to die. I want to hear the words. I'm sure there's many other parents who would want to hear those words as well. I understand legally. Take your money, get up out of here.
Zucchini's got about 12 minutes.
I want to hear them.
I can start to smell it already. It's cooking.
One of Wayne Jones' brothers was interviewed after the settlement.
Yeah.
And
I just hope the zucchini's actually cooking and turkey's not just getting dried out.
How's it going? He said,
that would
the
suck.
thing that hurt me the most was they wouldn't talk to
that
me.
Would
they wouldn't
kill
give me
me.
Information, and they wouldn't just
kill
tell me
me.
they were sorry it happened. That's it. That's all the man wanted.
I
And
wouldn't do anything.
they
I
turn
just
their back
order
on you. They
McDonald's or
lock
some
down.
shit.
All the information gets locked down. Nobody wants to release the dash cams.
Right.
You get to fight every inch of the way.
Well, so is there, based on the climate of what we've been seeing, well, I had a great conversation about this with Jamal Bowman, new congressperson out in New York, 16th district, and he was saying how this is unprecedented, what we're seeing right now. Like, from a civil rights perspective, people in the streets, people protesting and affecting all people of all colors, nationalities, religions. People are really looking at what's happening, particularly in the black community, and they're going, hey, this got to stop. Does this look promising to you, or are you waiting for more evidence before you make that conclusion?
After George Floyd was killed, and they had these protests going on around the world, I mean, thousands, tens of thousands of people, I thought to myself, okay, we could really implement some real change. But it's always a waiting game. It always gets stretched out, just like the litigation. 5 years later, they know that you're going to be tired, you're going to be worn out. It costs money. People are drained. It's emotionally draining. The same thing's going to happen. We have to try and avoid that same thing happening when it comes to implementing change, because time, they want to wear people out. The protests have stopped going out. COVID has helped with that a little bit, with the protesting that's kept up. So, do I feel like we're going to be able to achieve some change? Yes. Some of the things they talk about, is we need more training for the officers. I got to tell you, I've never been a big fan of thinking that training them more is going to make them deal with these situations better. These are basic human decency issues, right?
Right.
When you're dealing with someone where you have no real understanding or compassion or respect for their livelihood and their lives. And I don't think training is going to change that. We need better filters in determining who gets into the police department. Mm-hmm. That would help. Like better mental health, reviews to see where these people stand, what their issues might be with respect to their racial biases or prejudices. Because I don't think training fixes that. It's amazing to me that you can stand over a man who's been in a chokehold for 17 seconds, like Mr. Jones. He's not moving. Yes, he's not responding to your commands to drop the knife. He looks like he's unconscious, and then shoot him 22 times. That takes a special, not right issue to make that happen.
Right.
The training is not going to help that. We need to do a better job of who's carrying these guns around. Right. Which brings us to the issue, the whole defund the police issue. I heard this black sheriff say it best. He said, you know what our problem is? No matter what the issue is, we send a guy with disputes between neighbors. Let the social worker knows their community. They know their neighbors. They can go over and say, oh yeah, I know Tim. I'll go over, I'll stop by his house. And they can check in on it. They're not holding a gun. They're not going to be scared to death rolling up on somebody. And it can be resolved, hopefully, in a much easier manner. So when we talk about defunding the police, there's a lot of misinformation, right? You've heard Joe Rogan fall into that trap. It's not about getting rid of the police. Mm-hmm. There are people out here who are always
Joe Rogan's
to exploit
a
and get over.
And
the truth is, it's the financial crimes that are a big deal these days, really. But we can take a lot of some of the funding out of these police departments and stop putting into military equipment.
Right.
And these special vehicles and heavy artillery, and put it into what will be cheaper, paying social workers to take a lot of these little things off of the officers' plates. Because yes, they have a tough job. Yes, it's strenuous. Yes, when you walk into certain places, you can be afraid of what's going to happen.
Did not feel good on my ass at all.
But there's so many situations where they don't need to be the ones holding a gun, and unnecessarily getting nervous. It's too easy subjectively under this test for an officer to say, I fear for my safety.
Right.
Okay, qualified immunity, done. It's too easy.
Yeah, I do support defunding the police to a certain extent. And like you, I think of it as reallocating of resources to other institutions. And I know a number of these cases where people are shot by police. Someone has a mental health issue going in play. Person has a mental health issue. They called earlier that day they had taken them to a facility, resulting in the death of their loved one. So I think it's bad that, as you stated, police officers dealing with situations that I don't think they get enough training to deal with those type of situations. I will give them that. I would say, if you don't know you're going to check on a kitty in a tree, or a person with a AR-15, that's too wide a gap of issues to deal with, or a person who's having hallucinations, who's 2 months off their medication. That's like too much for me not to know what I'm going into when I go out there. So I say, and I say maybe we should have for another division that's, I don't know, the mental health division. I don't know, the real
Okay, so
wellness
the
protection
smell
check division.
smells like
I don't know
you
that
can smell the
does
sesame
that.
oil.
And then I also imagine that we should
the
pay,
garlic.
and we should have some elite police officers, the ones that are trained for these types of activities, who are battle tested, who get even more money. Like I pay the really good ones more. Get rid of the bad ones, the weak ones, the ones who shouldn't be, like the officer who shot Tamir Rice. Get rid of his ass. He's gone. He shouldn't be a cop. He shouldn't be able to get fired and go work across the street. So I know that's a lot to digest, but that's how I see it. And a lot of people in my community who have called up to the show, they kind of agree with those remedies for the situation. Did any of that make sense?
Yes, and getting them fired, that's a whole other issue. One thing I thought was interesting, in the interviews I've done recently, one of the problems I've cited is whenever these officers have complaints against them, they just jump ship. They just switch to a different department. They go to the sheriff's office down the street, the police office in the neighboring county, and then the investigation stops because that police department doesn't want to invest those resources in it to do an internal investigation to an officer who's no longer employed there. One of the things the Breonna Taylor settlement changes they have to implement is tracking when these officers do that and keep these investigations going till they're closed out. That's a huge point, because the big problem is the police unions, and they're doing their job. Man, they're doing their job well. Let's be clear. Their job is to protect the officers, protect the security of their employment, protect their pay and their benefits, and they do it, and they do it well. The hurdles, the procedural hoops they have to jump through to deal with these officers who've engaged in conduct that's unbecoming or excessive force. They've done an incredible job, and it makes it really hard to go after these officers and get someone fired. It makes it real tough.
So you're bad at, you do a horrible job. I know specifically in Tamir Rice, the officer, in his jacket, Mr. Brown, they said this guy should not be a cop. Like, he got fired from the last agency he was policing with. They said this guy's horrible under pressure. He should not be a cop. Who goes right across the town, gets another position. They weren't able to look at his jacket to even know that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, they close the investigation out before it's finished, so there's nothing to look at. It's like you're about to take a test at school and you switch schools, so no one knows how your homework was the rest of the year at the prior school. It's kind of like that. I mean, wow. You essentially get a fresh start. And it was interesting to see in the Breonna Taylor case that one of the terms was to deal with that problem. Because those unions have insulated those officers. They've done a bang-up job.
Those unions are crooked as fuck, and they've got to go.
From dealing with, negative consequences.
Yeah, every time I see footage of the New York police union, I see some guy.
I don't mind the police having a union, but what's the point of a union if it's a shitty union?
Shake, and he's basically threatening citizens like, hey, if you don't treat us better, some things could happen in your community and we'll just look the other way. Like, if you don't like what we're policing, then, you're on your own, that type of thing. They see
out there all the time. Oh, it's just some bad apples. Like, they don't understand where that phrase comes from. The phrase means is a couple bad apples spoil the whole barrel.
Hey, what's up? I'm in here. I'm streaming.
Right? So acknowledging you have a couple bad apples, why you can't then acknowledge that there's a threat.
It's probably my mom, so you're probably
spoiled, that we need to deal with it and address it. It's like when we say it's a mental health.
It's in the oven. I'm about to take it out and check on it.
Oh, it's not done
right?
yet.
Yeah.
First thing, we gotta acknowledge we have a problem, and we're having a hard time dealing with it. From the administration.
Yeah.
And until we do that, we can't start dealing with this and approaching it really as a mental health issue and trying to resolve
Sure.
it.
You just opened up a hornet's nest, man, because a lot of Americans on medication. Like, where do you start? You know what I mean? As over-medicated as the United States is, that could be pretty much almost every run-in with the police. We could say it was a mental health issue concerning the citizen, I should say, the civilian.
I'm speaking more from a
Net gator on.
systemic racism perspective. Right? It could be. We should view it as a mental health issue. We need to acknowledge it first, and then approach it in an appropriate way to deal with it.
We're about to take this out.
If only we could, right? If only we just saw people.
Oh, it
people
smells
and there
like
wasn't
it's
this
cooking for sure.
instant
I don't
fear
know if it's
some
done,
have of others.
but it
you know what I mean? The
definitely
black
smells
folks,
like it's cooking.
Maybe
So,
maybe
I'm excited.
we could get some justice.
Oh,
with the
this shit's
I don't know,
roasting.
you know, I want you to do well, Mr. Brown, but like you practice under law. We don't need criminal.
I think it's done.
We don't need having you have to take cases where people have been wrongfully killed. I mean, I could do without these cases, and I'm sure the victims and the families could do without them as well.
Oh,
if we could somehow
no.
solve this problem.
Wait.
I don't know.
It's not
if
bad,
we
it's
wanna
not
solve
bad,
it,
it's
though,
not
Mr.
bad.
Brown, because we could put a man on the moon. We could put a space force, a force in outer space, but we can't get police officers not to shoot kids.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the way things are going, my practice is going national with the excessive force cases. I just picked up a case in Las Vegas, right? This man is outside. He gets a report. He's outside in his front yard holding a sword. Like that.
I guess
Okay,
I'll
that's
just
bad.
cut a piece of this
They've dealt with
zucchini
this
and
man
try
like
it.
7 times in the past and
See if
transported
it's
him
done.
to the mental health unit.
Should have probably seasoned
So
up
they
the
know.
zucchini.
So they have a choice.
Whoa.
What are you
Okay,
gonna do?
she's hot.
What do you think is gonna happen
hot.
if you show up with a gun and
Rock's
approach
hot.
this man and tell him to put down the sword? Like, you know what's gonna happen. He's gonna walk towards you and you're gonna shoot him and kill him. And that's what they did. Why don't they say, okay,
Huh.
we're dealing with this gentleman. He's got a sword. He's never hurt
Okay,
anybody
he's
in the
done.
past. Let's show up with some beanbag guns,
He's gotta go.
and some tasers, and get this man the help he needs.
Let's
That's
throw a
the
net
whole
over his
point.
ass and
That's not what
drag him up out of there.
Fuck.
They walk up and they roll up.
I'm
on
gonna
him,
add some
and they know him. Hey, Justin, put down the
salt
sword.
to
Put
the
down the
zucchini.
sword. And when he
Okay.
walks towards them, shot and killed.
They just got tired of dealing with him. I mean, that's.
Some
I mean,
salt.
that's just me saying. I mean, that's the way I
Then
look at it.
some
I mean,
mozzarella
just say, you know what,
cheese.
that's it. We tired of coming out here. It's
Damn
time.
it,
It's time
cheese.
for him to go. And that's horrific that they could be judge, jury, and executioner of civilians.
Excellent.
And as you stated,
Oh,
that,
really good.
so
Excellent.
wow. So Las Vegas case. Now you're representing them.
Right at
Yeah.
They represent. Them.
Okay.
So a couple weeks ago, I picked it up. You know, think of Wayne Jones. This man is walking next to the sidewalk, and the reason he's approached is because he's not on the sidewalk, and you end up dead 10
Who's
minutes later.
Wayne Jones?
Like, think about that. You're not walking on the sidewalk, and you're dead. Like
No,
7
I
times.
used the pasta
Like,
sauce.
that doesn't make any sense. I don't care what happens. So what in the world happens that you approach a man about why he's not on the sidewalk and he ends up dead?
Right.
You know, that's a disturbing, frightening prospect for a black man in this country.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Mr. Brown, I want to thank you so much for taking time out and having this conversation. There is so much going on, man. I would love to bring you back as we have other cases,
All right,
find
then.
out what's going on in Las Vegas with your
Well,
case.
that's much.
And also, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have a lot of work ahead of us.
North says
Yeah,
hi
you're
to
covering
whoever
these
else is
stories,
watching
and
this
I know it's
stream.
not going to stop you. You're doing your work.
Especially
It's not
if
gonna
it's
stop.
my mom
How
or
can people
anybody else
follow
we
you
know
and find
personally.
out more about what you have going on?
My website is brownfirmpllc.com, and you can get info on our LinkedIn, our Facebook, and
I'm gonna cook it for like whatever minutes
LinkedIn, Facebook,
with the
and
cheese on top.
Twitter on the website.
So far, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Kind of looks like a
Yeah.
And thanks
like
so
a
much for having me, Tim.
flatbread
It's a pleasure to
pizza
be happy to
type
come
deal
back.
type
Man,
shit.
definitely, man. I appreciate it, man.
But without
we
the
are
bread.
honored to have your presence, man. And yeah, I remember the Freddie Gray story.
Word.
I haven't heard of the Mr. Jones story. It sounds very eerily similar to some others that I've covered as well, though. This horrific, doesn't make sense. People, I mean, we could go on and on. It's like so many of these stories. I think about the Laquan McDonald case where they shot the
Laquan?
kid like 15 times. And he had a pocket knife. Ooh, scary pocket knife the kid had. So, I mean, I wish I'd have known you then. I'd have definitely brought you in for some legal expertise to go along with my ranting. Because I can use you to talk about the legal ramifications of it.
I'm happy to do it.
All right, man. Thank you once again, brother. That's it. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in.
All
I'm Tim
right.
Black. Don't forget to follow Mr.
That
Christopher
shit made me
Brown.
sweat,
I'll put the
man.
links in the description box below.
Fucking hot
You know
ass
I'm Real
oven.
Tim Black on Facebook and Twitter. And that's it. Have a good one.
Alright.
Thank you for tuning in to the
Oven's
Power
really little
Hour
so
with
the
Tim
shit is
Black.
hot.
Find that
Like
shit.
hot. Let's see. There we go. Mhm. Okay. I know that shit's not gonna take very long. Then I'm gonna put the fucking green onions on it. I hope you enjoyed my cooking class today. Yeah, like I said, I always wanted my own little cooking show when I was a kid. So now I get to have it, which is great. Get to have some more whiskey too. Because I'm an adult and I do what I want. So I pay my own bills.
I just wanted to
Right,
say,
babe?
yeah, but I wanted to say that Jeff Mack's doing it again.
He's naked in the back again.
Yeah, he must have received too much like positive reinforcement on that one.
Well, that is what Aaron was saying. The girls love it, especially the black girls, he said.
Too. Aaron was like, "Oh, I want to get these
Yeah.
that."
He's like, the black girls like it. Hint, hint. To me, I guess. I think he did. Aaron's awesome. He's cool.
I hope Aaron is the person that we found when I googled his name on YouTube.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I imagine that it is.
Yeah.
You're right, I should be nicer.
Yeah, he's dude. Aaron's totally fucking cool. Anybody who watches my shit that I don't know is fucking cool as shit.
I agree. I agree. You have a certain type.
Yeah. I have a certain type in real life. You know? It's all good.
Yeah, this is Darcy's type. Well, in real life, you're not going to hang out with like.
The fuck, man? Is this melting or not? You know about it?
Hey, can I have some whiskey?
Yeah.
You still think we go on Was this yesterday you bought all this?
No, it was like 2 days ago. Yeah, I think it does. I think it can.
And if we took like 5 days off the time?
Yeah. We can do that also. You know? Pickle juice. What? Are you done working? Oh, okay.
It's like actually going incredibly slowly, but
Oh, really?
this guy's lucky. Like honestly, I'm just enjoying the story.
Yeah. Is it just hard to read? Is that why it's
No, it's
taking
not
so?
hard to read. It's that I want to edit it.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Well, that editing it makes it easier to read, right? So it must be kind of difficult to read if you're like seeing things and you're like, ah.
No, I think it's a pretty good read. It's pretty
Yeah.
well written, but that's what makes me want to improve it even more.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, it's like I like it, but I
Almost ready.
figure that this would make all the difference in that part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really just a really interesting story.
That's cool. I'm glad you finally like it.
Everyone did just
I want to read it.
You'll get it. Well, here's
say the guy on there.
the one thing I will say about it, and it's interesting because I'm learning about this in class. Right?
Restating
It's about a
something
memoir. It's
aloud
not just
that,
like a recounting
was
of
being
events.
said.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it
Here
than
and
that,
there.
right? Like,
Right.
sitting-
You gotta have character development and
And
shit.
so he does some of that, but he does quite a bit of that. Like it's pretty good. He's a pretty good storyteller, right?
Mhm.
But
Everyone's
there's just a little too much for counting events in terms of like from beginning to end. My whole life. I mean, it's 550 pages.
Damn.
So it's hard to get somebody. You know
It's
what I
like
mean?
just fast forward to Meth.
You need to pare it
To
down.
Meth
Well, the
City.
story about his parents was really interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but that's a good intro, then a little bit of a middle,
But you do
and
have
then
to
if I
pare it
can
down
just.
a little bit. Like we
yeah.
can't hear about every girl you dated.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure.
that's gonna
everyone's
annoy
talking
you when
about
you read it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like a little bit of like I fucked this really hot chick this one time, just FYI. You know what I mean? But like without all that.
Oh man.
Yeah, you don't know.
Can you hand me 2
Especially
plates?
imagine if you were in
Or,
jail.
yeah.
You'd have nothing to do.
Or
but
that's my
reminisce-
plate from earlier. It's fine.
Reminisce about the glory days.
Seen him
Play
back
for
and
me,
forth
play
here,
for
there,
you.
there, and here.
Yeah, plate for me, plate for you. Get some new wires. Shit. We want to get our wires
Yeah, kitchen
crossed.
space is our office. Let's go in the kitchen. I will say the other thing is the kitchen at the place we went and looked at today is probably. I was thinking the counter space was similar to this, but it's even less maybe.
Yeah, but it was so open though.
You liked it?
Yeah, I really liked the kitchen because it was like open. You could like see the dining room, and like
the table.
yeah, and you can like
Okay.
cook it up and hang out and
Okay. I actually don't mind this kitchen
Yeah.
here. That's like all the room, like from everything else, but the
As
kitchen
long as it's
itself
good.
is really nice. There's a lot of
Yeah.
cabinet space.
as long as there's only one of us cooking in here at a time, it's totally possible.
That's how it has to be forever and ever. Otherwise, we'll divorce each other. Right?
Wrong.
Maybe we'll try
Incorrect.
to cook together someday.
Yeah. In this
Am I annoying
kitchen?
you right now?
No. Okay, I think this shit has got to be done at this point.
No.
Oh. But yeah, it's done.
I don't know if you heard me say that it's like pizza bread, but without the bread.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said it at the exact same time as you. That was the funny thing. Because I thought you heard me say it on the live
I heard
stream.
you say something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like a Monty's pizza bread, you know what I mean?
This is my
I might
masterpiece.
put ranch on top of it.
My masterpiece here. Not too bad. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Okay. Here I was worried. Ha! Worry is for fools. Me, I do wish I would have added some kind of spicy component, personally, for my taste. But I can always add hot sauce, so it doesn't matter.
Your hot chili pepper, flavor, whatever on it.
Yeah. Nice. My piece de resistance. Guys, this is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. I'm stoked. There it is. Lighting's bad, but whoa! You get the gist of it, though. All right, I'm about to eat. So I'm gonna pause this video, and I'm actually gonna eat, and then I will be back to stream for tonight for the protests and stuff. So like, give me like 10, 30, or actually give me like 30 minutes, and I'll be back. But yeah, thanks for just tuning in.
This is very impressive. You're gonna love cooking now too, right?
Yeah.
It's fun to be creative.
Down the house.
Did you come up with this all by yourself? You just made it up in your brain?
No, yeah.
Well, either way, that's so cool. I love it. Right? You love me.
Oh my gosh, all this is heard. All this is being recorded.
What?
Why are you away from me? Live from the kitchen.